the dark, it's time to rave.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the ETVT podcast, and we are going to have another episode of Drum Roll, please. I'm sorry, book reviews and interviews. Let's get to it. I'm super excited. It is currently 3:18 in the morning. I can't read this. How do you? 3:17 in the morning. After this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and learn how to make one of those Taco Bell crunchy wraps, Crunch Wrap Supreme. I saw a recipe on an Instagram video. Anyway, let's do this. Today's special guest, who actually is alive this time, but I did not reach out to him in person. I will, and he will actually see this before we get it done, is a local author by the name Kenny Emmanuel, and we are going to be reviewing his novelette, bam, The Dark Side of Light. Let me make the thumbnail real quick. Okay, I'm going to do a different pose just in case I want to do something cooler. Peep the jawline. All right, there it is. I've been working on that, so in case you guys didn't notice. Yes, let's get into it. I have notes. Let me pull out my handy-dandy phone. This is a novelette, and I could be pronouncing it wrong if I'm being honest with you. I've only read it, haven't really talked about it. So basically what this book is, if you haven't heard of a novelette, it is a compilation as well, but there are a bunch of stories that are compiled into a single book, and in this case they don't have any relation to each other. It kind of reminds me of this one show on Netflix, Love, Death, and Robots, and it could also be similar to something like Where the Sidewalk Ends, which I should have somewhere here unless I let somebody borrow it or left it in an office somewhere, or any other collection of poetry. Like I also have some works by Edgar Allan Poe sitting actually on my bedside right now because I can't understand it and it's so boring sometimes it makes me fall asleep. Hey, chill out. Anyway. So yeah, Kenny Emmanuel is a sci-fi. He's a sci-fi writer, and sci-fi equals science fiction. It's a lot of action. Typically, I don't think any of his novelettes didn't have action, and because this is something that's so new, which I did enjoy thoroughly, I don't want to give anything away, especially copyright, and out of respect for the author who is local. Like I said, here out of Huntsville. Everybody cheer. Just making all the Huntsville sounds. Watch out for that cow. All right, let's get I'm sorry, like I said, guys, it's almost 3:30 in the morning, so I'm really excited. I had about 4 cups of coffee. I was doing some studying for work, and it is what it is. Anywho, I'm going to go ahead and read the back. I can show it right here. This is a little, look at that. Bam. Okay, so this is what it says. Survivors of a post-apoc... Let me restart that. Survivors of a post-apoc... Oh my goodness. Survivors of a post-apocalyptic level event seek revenge on those responsible for the barren wastelands they once called home. Cut. Violet and her tactically enhanced space combat light armor, Solaris, are adrift in space. Cut. After his mother's death, Lucian stands against the most powerful order to clear his name. Cut. Seraphine, or Seraphine, isn't spliced, a popular trend among her peers that alters their genetic code with characteristics from animals and reptiles. Cut. Damien finds his soulmate amongst the hostages when his app-connected ring turns gold. Oh, cut. I like that one. That was one of my favorite ones, actually. Light's return to pro gaming puts close relatives in the crosshairs. That was definitely one of my top 3. Cut. They're all just trying to stand in the light, but that means casting shadows. So the last one was easy. All right, I need a break after that. There's a lot of big words for your boy over here. I know, go figure. Book reviews and interviews, right? Anyway, first, my personal feelings. And this is where it gets funny. Let me pull up my notes. Because I haven't read a novelette that isn't a collection of poetry or anything that's really modern, like recent within the last 5 to 10 years. So this was a new experience for me, and I want to honestly say, in case you haven't noticed, I'm getting serious now. We are officially into the book review. Enjoy this. I want to honestly say that it was a little difficult for me to get used to, and I don't think I am used to it. I actually have part 2 of his Dark Side of Light collection. I actually bought 2 copies because one I gifted to a friend. And I'm holding off on that now. I figured I'd read a book in between because what I found to happen is this. And Kenny is, I'm not even going to use the word gifted because I don't know him like that. I don't know his story. I don't know if he was born with a natural talent, but he is a very skilled writer. And it was a sweet experience getting to have such a quick build up. You know, when you're reading these novelettes and you know, this book, as you can see, it's not a super massive book. And we have about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's about 7 novelettes in here. 6. Let me check my notes. Okay, I got 8, 9. I got about 9 on my notes. So maybe. Yeah, so I guess the back doesn't, I don't think the back tells all the stories or gives a description on all the stories. But anyway, you know, it kind of felt like a double-edged sword, right? You have a limited amount of pages to build the plot, build the setting, build the story, build the characters, protagonists, antagonists, all this. And what you feel like is you feel like you're getting about half of a full book put into one. And when I say half of a full book is because I feel like personally it takes me about half of a, like when I was reading Akatar, the Court of Thorns and Roses. When I was reading, what's another good example? The Bell Jar, To Kill a Mockingbird. These are all my nonfiction collections. This is not all my fiction. I don't know where all of my books are. I have to double check. But anyway, any book I read, it usually takes me up to about the halfway point to really start to get a grasp of who's who, who's doing what certain possibilities are. Like then when I read a name, I can start putting pieces together and even my own theories and develop my own ideas. By the time you get to that point with a lot of these stories, you're pretty much at the end. And one thing that was really difficult for me is I felt like I would get so attached to the story and the characters. And let me tell you, Kenny goes out with a bang each and every single time. When I say a bang, I mean, yes, they're short stories, but you will have to take a break in between each book. You really will. Because with such a limited amount of pages, quite frankly, I'm not going to say time. With such a limited amount of pages to do all that, you have to have a strong ending. And when you have a strong ending, it does feel rushed. I'm going to be honest with you. It feels a little rushed, but you're not necessarily hungry throughout the story. You kind of forget that it's a novelette until the ending hits you by surprise. And you're like, oh, yeah. So what I found, you know, after each one is I had so many questions. And pretty much with every single one of the stories that he wrote, I wanted more. I feel like every novelette in here. Oh, my hair looks crazy. Can you pretend to cut? I'm doing this by myself here. Oh God. Anyway, I got to get a fade or something. Wow, what is this? Anywho, every single novelette could have been made into a full book, and I don't know if he's gonna do that. That's probably a question I'll ask if I get the pleasures of interviewing him. Oh, what's going on? Something's cutting. Oh, stop the tape. What is? All right, we're back. Camera battery died. Long story. Anywho, yeah, each one could have been a full book, if I'm being honest with you. Every single one. And again, it's a double-edged sword, blessing and curse, however you want to look at it. With Kenny being a science fiction writer, and I will honestly tell you, he writes like a New York Times bestseller. And I know there's like this joke that's also kind of not a joke, where it's like everybody is a New York Times bestseller nowadays, which I kind of agree. That's a whole nother conversation about all the arts and our standards and rules and boundaries and corporations. That's a completely different conversation. But Kenny really does write like a New York Times bestseller. I didn't feel any different because I bought this from a local author. Actually, I was really professional. I was really asking myself the question, how is he not more popular? So I did go on his website and saw that he makes video games and does other projects, which, you know, I'm definitely going to get into more when I have the mental energy and time. But yeah, you know, I see him at a lot of events. Let me put it in my famous book hold area. Bam, Dark Side of Light. Man, yeah, it's a beautiful shiny cover in case you couldn't tell in the beginning. Oh yeah. Don't you move. I still haven't figured out who she was, though. There was a few novelettes that would have matched her. I don't know. But again, I'm not going to use names or go into too many details as much as I want to, especially I'm not doing it without his permission. So, carry on. I found myself asking a lot of questions, too. Like, did this guy actually serve in the military? Because he has one of his novelettes where it is a military-type environment, but obviously with some science fiction. And he uses certain terminology and slang. But then again, when he explains different weapon systems that he and his coworkers, or whether he did alone or not, came up with, a lot of details are very intricate. And so it's like, okay, he has a good idea of how a weapon in the real world works, especially well enough to come up with, to use a little bit of realism along with adding the imagination. For example, Nikola Tesla dreaming of actually learning how to use thunder as a weapon. The father of electricity, for those of you who don't know that it's a real person. I was interested from the first novelette, and actually the ending of the first one is what made me decide, yeah, I'm going to continue. But again, they're all so different. There was one that kind of felt more like a schoolgirlish type, Monster High kind of feeling. I believe that one was actually called Vampirilla, Vampryella, I believe. However, again, I'm not going to give away too many details, but that was good. That was good. It was actually the one on the back that talked about splicing. If you want to replay from the beginning, there was a description on that one. So, the fact that he could write about so many different things, first off, is fantastic. You put yourself in a position of a godlike character, of a humbled character who's a victim of a terrible, corrupt, very lost system. To a character it's a military operation, to a character that's, just a normal person who loves his family and enjoys doing certain things. Kenny is a very open-minded writer that can write numerous different characters, and I think that really helps him with the style of novelettes, because he has the ability to compact so many things into one. There was one novelette that kind of felt like I was reading something from Star Citizen or No Man's Sky, and I'm going to be honest with you, there was not a single one that did not pique my interest. I can't sit here and say that there's one that I heavily disliked. It's even difficult for me to say which one I may have disliked the most, because while I know I have my favorites, I didn't dislike any of them. I didn't. The only frustrating thing was, okay, you know how when you're scrolling through TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, for some young people, actually even old people, you guys are just as prone to doing this as we are, just as exposed to social media. As a matter of fact, a lot of you boomers, alphas, whatever the heck you guys are, Xers, born in 1970, 60, whatever, you guys are addicted to that Facebook and your phone. I don't want to hear it. That MySpace generation is not safe from what's going on now. You keyboard warriors, you guys are equally bad with ADHD and traffic and keyboard warring as we are, so I don't want to hear it. Everybody is a victim of brain rot. So when you're scrolling through Facebook and Instagram and you have a moment where after doing it for Lord knows how long, you're like, oh, wait, I'm hungry. I'm a human being. You got into the sunlight and you're like, whoa, wait, the sun exists. It kind of felt like that after each story. Like, I felt brain rotted because I had to take a moment, and then you have to readjust, become reaccustomed. And I'm not going to lie to you, especially if you're going to do it all in one setting, it could be a little mentally exhausting having to relearn a completely different narrative. And when I say completely different, I mean completely different. Style, character, plot, everything. I don't necessarily think there's any two stories in his collection that are the same. In the beginning, I did kind of expect like one to slightly roll on or ease into another, but no, he doesn't ease on into it. He's like, you're taking this one. That was probably a bad, maybe the AI will delete that. I didn't mean it like that. Anywho, yeah, that's how it is. So I can't say that there was a particular theme, and that's not something that I'm accustomed to as a frequent reader. So I will say that Kenny is bold. Kenny breaks a lot of rules unless this is how a novelette is supposed to be. But there's no writer like Kenny. Kenny writes the way Kenny writes, and to add to that, he does include a lot of details in his writing, so he will take the time to explain certain components and weapon systems. And again, if you're not accustomed to having, like, my major was in computer science. I was an IT specialist for 5 years, both in the Army and as a civilian. So I've been a fan and obviously well practiced in the idea of theory, in the idea of logical thinking, analyzing, blah, 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 blah. Is the mind of an engineer or whatever you want to call it. Everybody throws so many terms around, I don't even care anymore. In that general field, it was a little more comfortable for my brain. To have all of the technological terminology, the scientific terminology, and also my brain is a little more accustomed to thinking theory. to kind of, in a way, make sense of what doesn't make sense, but also at the same time, yes, you made sense of it in your head, but you're still questioning. You're still open-minded to the idea that it is either 0.00001% right or you're on the money. And what makes it even hard with something like books, especially sci-fi and fiction, is you will become a victim of your own imagination. Because sometimes you can be completely off the mark, but you're not wrong, because that's why they're fiction books. You know, your mind developed a completely different idea, and everybody's mind is different. And if you think about the fact that there's over 7 billion, at least from what we were able to count in some statistic, humans in this earth, with every single brain thinking differently, and every single brain prior to that, trillions and trillions and trillions for millenniums and decades, hundreds of thousands of years, all different. That is a very difficult thought for most of us to comprehend in today's society, especially as we encapsulate our own minds and the day job and paying bills, and we see life as such a simplistic thing because we're covered in the social layer, and then we kind of lose grasp of what we truly are, and that is infinite. It's ambiguous. Yes, all that did go through my mind. That's just how I think. When you're reading this, you have to be open-minded. You have to understand, and a lot of things you're probably gonna have to reread, but give yourself some grace when you're reading Kenny's writing, because maybe Kenny doesn't want you, and this will be a good question, if I get the chance to interview him. Maybe Kenny doesn't want you to understand it the way he's writing it. Maybe Kenny wants you to understand it the way your brain understands it best. Create, the crazy image with all the details he's given you that your brain can form. I'm sure that a lot of ships he described look completely different in my head than it would in any of your guys' head. So it would be cool to have like him and a group of people sit around and be like, what did you get from this description? What did you get from this plot? What do you think this weapon system looks like? What do you think this certain creature sounded like? I mean, that would be great. So yeah, this is an interesting interview, especially for me, because I've never interviewed a sci-fi fiction book before. What's even more interesting is that this is from a local artist. So it's not something that's trending. It's not something that I can just go on social media and already have so much built off of. And I'm going to give this one, it's review time, because we're going to have to close it out. I don't know how long this battery is going to last. I'm giving Kenny a good 8.5 out of 10. And I don't even think my last, 1.5 is even Kenny's doing. I think it's more about how I felt personally about reading the book. I struggled with the novelette thing. It was hard for me to have to, not even hard, I mean, obviously it wasn't difficult. It was a little uncomfortable for me to continuously have to rebuild one after the other, especially when I initially expected them to somewhat roll into each other. I probably should have read the back of the book first. But even then, the back of the book is so broad that you still wouldn't know what to expect. I'll tell you, the back of the book does not prepare you for the magic and intensity that's actually in there. It's an interesting feeling because you get so attached and then you're getting reattached. It kind of plays with your heart a little bit. If I meant to take these glasses off a long time ago. Guys, there's going to be a glare for this whole podcast episode. Just get over it. It'll be fine. I'm not that famous, so nobody cares. Anyway, yeah, I definitely give it a higher rating than F. Scott Fitzgerald's Beautiful and Damned. It was everything I wanted it to be. It just kind of caught me by surprise. So yeah, Kenny Emmanuel, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and post a link to his website, and in his book he has one. And again, if anybody is interested in reading a book that I review, let me know. I'll let you borrow it. I'm sorry, I love my library collection, and books are actually kind of expensive sometimes. So I'll let you borrow it if I know you personally, or if you want to. I don't know if somebody's like, "Hey, I'll buy that book off of you." Actually, I don't know if I could do that, so scratch that last part out. But yeah, I'll let you borrow the book. I'll send it to you. Keep in touch with me, and when you're done, give it back so I can keep my library looking pretty. The Dark Side of Light, and actually, I will give a review for part 2 after. When I read it, it's not going to be anytime soon, I promise you that, but excellent job, Kenny. He is very talented. I'm also going to tag his social medias in there. I do feel like Kenny deserves more popularity, 100%. I have seen him attend local events. I've seen him at fantasy events. I've seen him speak to children I didn't see him in person on this one, but I saw on Blue Apple Books. Oh my goodness, shout out to Blue Apple Books. Everybody support your local library, please. They are crucial. As a matter of fact, one of these days I'm going to play one of those One of those, you know how when you see the ads with the puppies or the children and they're like, please donate. Imagine, I'm going to have one for supporting your local library. And what my theme is going to be is it's going to be like, it is a gray, dark world when people are not actually reading literature. If you don't have books and you have all this history wiped, we're screwed. Not only are we doomed to repeat history, but this stuff is really good for your brain. 100%. It allows you to grow literally spiritually as a person, as long as you are considering. Here's the thing, and don't just cage yourself in to read only things that you enjoy and that are comfortable to you. Man, branch out. It really will help you grow as a person. You become more open-minded. You become more emotionally intelligent, in my opinion. You enable yourself to grow in things like empathy. And actually, I was watching a video where they were talking about how reading the Bible and actually, that video was very interesting. The title of it was something about advice I would give to my 20, 21, 23-year-old self, and he was a 70-something-year-old self-made millionaire. And that was one of his things is he was like, you love reading. There are many things you can't get from books. Like emotional intelligence and stuff, you can maybe understand from reading, but you have to learn how to put things in practice. But I promise, the more you read, the more things start coming naturally. It just helps you grow in your intelligence. I'm not talking about just books, but I mean in your person. So what was my point of saying all that? Oh, yeah, support your local library. It's very important. Shout out to Blue Apple Books. That was a much longer free ad than the last one. Let me put Kenny's book up. I'm waving this thing around like I don't enjoy it. All right. Oh, yeah, what was I doing last time? There's the light. Wait for it. Oh, yeah, by the way, you guys see my limited edition copy of The Hobbit. Shout out to Blue Apple Books. Thank you very much. Support your local library. All right. I believe that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to provide the resources, and that is today's book interview. It is currently 3:30, 35, 40, 42 in the morning. I'm going to go ahead and make those crunchy wraps. Wish me luck. I'm going to follow that Instagram video because that's our new cooking book in today's age. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you guys later. Cue the exit music. Cue the outro. Cue the outro. Turn this off with my toe.
ETVT coming from the heart. Hot waves crash like a tidal wave. Jump into the dark, it's time to rave.